I think some of the reason why when you see the stats about businesses not lasting longer than 5 or 10 years is eventually over time, if you don't have good advisors next with you, whether it's legal advisors or fractional CFOs or tax CPAs, whatever they may be, eventually some mistake happens and could be quite costly. That's good. So tell me, what really motivates you daily in your work?
Oh, my sons, you can see my older son there over my shoulder. And in terms of helping clients, I think my motivation, I want clients to know what they're dealing with and to be able to make informed decisions. I also want them to feel like they're getting proactive service.
This is the Bender CFO Podcast, where we empower business owners to gain financial clarity and maximize growth.
Hey everyone, I just spoke with Aron Phillips. It was just a great discussion with legal nuggets right and left. So if you are a small business owner, or you want to start a business, or you want to start a new business, or you want to sell your business, or you want to take out a bank loan, there's so many things. You want to buy a business, you want to buy out a partner, or you want to start a business with a partnership, there's so many reasons why you need to have a good attorney to kind of review your documents, really just talk through different challenges or issues. I've been doing fractional CFO work for almost a decade, and before that, worked in the corporate world for many years. So I actually learned something, especially related to the bank documents, that was somewhat alarming. So I hope did you enjoy this discussion? This is free nuggets that he's given you right and left. You have to pay whatever attorney rate is for much of this information. So please listen, and hopefully you learn something and find it valuable. Hello, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with an incredible legal mind who's making a real impact in the business world, Aron Phillips. Aron is the founder and principal attorney at Aron Phillips Law, where he specializes in helping business owners navigate legal complexities from business formations and mergers to commercial real estate and litigation. With a passion for advocacy and a strategic approach to problem solving, Aron has built a reputation for providing top-tier legal counsel to entrepreneurs and business leaders alike. His journey into law started an undergraduate degree, magna cum laude, from the University of North Texas, followed by earning his JD with full scholarship from Baylor Law School. And Aron Phillips graduated in 2014 and started his firm only 4 years later in 2018. Beyond his legal practice, Aron is deeply involved in his community, serving as a board member of the Southlake Chamber of Commerce, a past ambassador for the Northwest Metroport Chamber, and a dedicated volunteer and supporter of several local causes, including the Justice Reform and Pregnancy Help for You. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Aron Phillips. How you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you, Shane. That was a lot. So hopefully live up to the hype.
I know. I've known Aron for a few years, actually, probably not too long after I started my firm and doing fractional CFO work. Aron, we got connected through networking and so forth. And I do remember even you starting your firm in 2018 through us, you praying about it, trying to decide what the best decision was. And here we are, 2025 of this recording, and you are continually growing and helping business owners really in their all the legal things. And that's why I'm doing this series again, and just reminding everyone is that I, as a fractional CFO, there are so many things that I learn more and more every day that I don't even know what to do in that scenario. And I got to bring other advisors and other people to really help my clients. And if any small business owner should have an attorney that they can turn to for all kinds of different things. Usually for me, it's around things like contracts and just making sure that we got good employment agreements and you got all the different paperwork in place. But it definitely comes into place more if you want to sell your business and do M&A. And there's so many things, setting up a new entity, all those things. Aron, I'm just going to start off with questions like, what really inspired you to start your own firm?
Starting my own firm, I think, is a function of the problem that exists in a lot of different professions, especially ones where there's technical or service type skill. You can have people that are good at that particular thing. Famously, doctors may be great surgeons, but have horrible bedside manner. So there's a lot of people that I think are good lawyers, good attorneys, but not great managers of people. And I seem to have several of those in my first couple of firms that I was working for. Conversely, growing up, I was in leadership positions a lot. As you mentioned, I ended up chairing the ambassadors for the Southlake Chamber and then subsequently getting on the board for them for 3 years. But growing up also, I generally found myself in leadership positions in any organization that I involved myself in because I'd like to think it's because I was not just organized and responsible, but I can navigate the interpersonal aspects of trying to lead people as well and still get things done. Eventually, I looked around at the firm that I had been at that point for 2 years and I was originating enough business to keep myself busy. And so it was a pretty small firm. And so I started trying to ask some questions about what our plans were to make the firm or to grow it. And basically the answers were, we don't have a plan. And if we did, we wouldn't tell you. They said it much more politely, but then we didn't even have an assistant. And I was like, hey, here's how much more efficient we could all be if we just had a full-time admin. And the response was, well, dealing with people's hard. There's always a rotating. It's always a position that you're trying to fill or trying to improve. Or it was just like these guys didn't really want to grow the firm. And so I just took my cues and went, okay, put my head down and started figuring out what it would look like to start my own firm, or if that was the right place for me, and ultimately landed on starting my own.
Yeah, no, I remember those discussion points, and it's definitely tough if not everybody's on the same page, kind of working as a team effectively. But so yeah, you guys, so you started your own firm, and you just, as we mentioned, a lot of different things that you do. What are some kind of key specific things where you feel like you add a lot of value to your clients to really help them either save money, save risk, whatever those things are? What are some good examples?
Oh, I think setting up an LLC is something where it's pretty cost effective in terms of if you screw it up, it might just destroy your business in the first few years. So setting up structures and entities is one piece. On that note, there's different triggers that can allow the owners to buy each other out. And had one situation recently that ended up coming into play where I'd done a buy-sell agreement several years prior. And this is a business that's worth several million at least. And we were able to buy out this one guy that was just not performing and not holding up his end of the deal. And he had some stuff going on. I won't get into nitty gritty of the details, but he just wasn't performing. And so we were able to go and lean on him using the agreement saying, okay, here's what we think it's worth. If you don't think it's worth that, here's the provisions that we're exercising our rights under. And I help the owners navigate that. Mergers and acquisitions, I'm going through one of those right now with a client. In that area, I think I'm useful both on the buy side and the sell side. On the sell side, just helping them through the process and understand that there are things that buyers are going to want, and it's normal for them to want that stuff. Because as a seller, sometimes you don't know, should I be disclosing this? When should I give them this information? Is it normal for them to want that? And then on the buy side, I can help with due diligence. For example, one time I helped a guy who was buying a business that produced a certain kind of food. And I was going through the due diligence documents that the other side had produced to us. And they had these notices from the Texas Health Services. And they had these notices going back several years. And every year it was the same complaint and the fines were getting worse. So I brought that to the attention of my client. And the seller was like, oh yeah, we actually have a meeting with them next week and we're hoping to resolve it. So that's why we didn't bring it up, highlight it to you. And we were like, can we be at that meeting, or, what's the plan to remedy this situation? Because we don't want to just be given a bad situation. We are in deep with the state being pissed at us for failing to comply with their standards. And that deal ended up falling apart. And the buyer was quite pleased that I found that, because I don't know if he just didn't notice it or he didn't have time to go through the due diligence documents himself.
Yeah.
Another example of an area, bank loans, commercial loans, they are not regulated the way that your mortgage would be. So bank loans, every single one, no exceptions. If I did not review them or an attorney did not review them in advance, my client, the borrower, would have been in default as soon as he signed. And I have another attorney friend that his theory on that is that banks do that on purpose, so that way they can always call the note if they don't feel good about the situation. And also they will use their boilerplate documents and put the onus on the borrower to go hire an attorney to tweak the documents as needed. And it's interesting because I've talked to a couple of commercial bankers, one of whom comes to mind, who will say something like, oh yeah, people don't need to review our loan documents. They're very boilerplate. The word boilerplate just means we use the same ones for everybody. It doesn't mean that they're good.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's great. Great, really specific examples. Yeah, the interesting when you talk to some of the bigger banks, how much they would really willing to negotiate. But yeah, that's a good point. Definitely all kinds of agreements where you need to get some guidance on. The buy-sell agreement you mentioned first, hugely important. I've seen issues with that where there wasn't anything, and then you just got to work it out later. It's much harder. And then, of course, it's interesting how many companies get involved that don't actually do any kind of due diligence. I know if it's a bigger deal, hopefully you're purchasing a business for millions and millions of dollars, hopefully there's some attorney involved in the mix. But even the smaller ones, I'm just going to buy this company for $500,000 or something that seems relatively small, depending on the size of the business. I know that's all relative, but may just say, we'll buy this and it's no big deal. And I was actually talking with somebody that they bought a business and apparently didn't do any due diligence, and they're just world kind of hurt, and I'm not sure if it'll survive or not, but this definitely needing some significant accounting and finance help. But sometimes it's too late, or it's just a lot harder to recover. So yeah, getting good help and guidance on any kind of mergers and acquisitions is great advice. And honestly, the banking thing, that's education to me, because usually you don't think about, especially if it's like Chase Bank or something, or Bank of America or somebody really big, you just don't think that you have much leverage there. But definitely a great idea to by the attorney.
Generally, if you go to them with well-reasoned points, then what are they going to do? Just say, yeah, we know it makes no sense, but you need to sign it anyway. Now, there are definitely points that they will generally not waive. So they'll literally change the law. I remember one time in a deal, and this is very common in commercial lending, they'll have you waive all of the provisions related to the process of foreclosure, which is pretty normal. But then they also waive the right of redemption, so redemption is where if you get the money, you can go buy the property back by making sure you paid what you need to. They'll also waive, though, the right of having a commercially reasonable sale, and then the right of an offset based on the price it was sold for versus the fair market value. But to give an example, I had a client and I had this conversation with the attorney on the other side. I said, based on the way this is written, you guys could and they can foreclose without notice. So you guys could foreclose without notice on Monday. Let us know that you foreclosed on Tuesday and that you now own it. And then on Wednesday, or that you've foreclosed upon it. And then on Wednesday, let us know that you sold it to yourselves for $1. And then my client still owes you millions and has no recourse. And the was like, but we wouldn't. And I was like, but you could. The way it's written, that's what's allowed. And so I was able to get them to walk back one or two of those provisions where they couldn't exactly do the scenario that I just described.
Yeah.
But that's very common.
How much of that paperwork? I mean, you can imagine that, because obviously you fill out these documents, it's got pages and pages of paragraphs. And a lot of times people just don't get an attorney for everything. And I know that you would recommend getting an attorney for everything, but like in that scenario, it almost just sounds like it might have some legal repercussion of putting stuff in there that it wasn't real clear to the average, but basically being misleading in some form or another.
It's not misleading in that situation. And it's like I said, it's not regulated. So if you're in the business world, you are expected to get the right professionals to help you with that situation. And the bank has lawyers. So if one side has lawyers and the other doesn't, the side that doesn't is going to be at a disadvantage. Just because you don't understand the documents doesn't mean you're getting out.
Yeah. Is there a certain kind of loan document, like, or obviously if it's a loan document related to real estate, something that's of a large amount, or a promissory note, or something pretty significant, or what about line of credits or something that's a little bit less?
Line of credits, I don't necessarily review those because it's just the cost benefit doesn't make sense. And those are generally smaller. It depends on the size of the business. Like you said, everything's relative. It might be a $50,000 line of credit, or a $100,000 line of credit, or a $250,000 line of credit. Now, if you are getting into the north of $1 million line of credit and you're going to use it a lot, it might be worth it, because at that point you're going to be paying interest and fees on it. It would justify itself in terms of the legal spend. But for real estate or other transactions, definitely I think north of $1 million, it's worth it. Between $500,000 and $1 million, it just depends on how cost conscious the client is. I still think it's worth it. If you get under $500,000, that's where I think it's not. Ideally, people would still get an attorney, but it just, at that point, it becomes cost prohibitive.
Yeah, it depends on how much you want to spend on that. But yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I do appreciate that. So tell me, are there certain like trends or in the industry that you're seeing right now that people need to pay attention to?
Not really. The law moves slowly. Okay, there is one situation. I wouldn't call it a trend, but we're usually behind everybody just because like series LLCs came and went. So that would be one trend. I see less series LLCs now than I did.
Oh yeah. What was the reason for that? Why would it be less people not interested anymore in that, especially real estate scenarios?
The requirements became more stringent in Texas a few years ago in terms of what's required to create and form a series. And so because of that, it became almost as cumbersome as forming a new entity. You can still form series LLCs. I'm not against it, but in terms of the cost benefit, it's no longer as much of a cost saving as it was before. So less people are doing that. The situation that I was thinking of it's not a trend so much as just a major upheaval is the Corporate Transparency Act that went into effect last year.
Yeah.
And then in December, it went back and forth with an injunction, then a stay of the injunction, then they reinstituted the injunction. And then last week, the Supreme Court issued an opinion saying, we haven't decided the case yet, but the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, can go ahead and enforce the filing and start and penalize people if they're not applying while we decide the case. So now it's back in. I've got a dozen or a couple dozen clients I'm going to need to be in touch with this week to make sure I've got their stuff and can file for them for the new deadline, because the new deadline to get back into compliance is March 21st.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a lot of back and forth last year. I mean, I know I'm not in the position to where I really did any of those. I would just want to make sure my clients were aware that's something you needed to do. And then, of course, in December, I felt it was like whiplash every week on what needed to be done. So it's definitely good to let people know what they need to be doing on that. But I definitely know some people didn't do anything because of what happened in December. It's like, why, especially the week of Christmas and New Year's, why do stuff when it's unclear? Good information there. So tell me a little bit, like, how do you find that partnering with other finance professionals is really successful and help be a good relationship?
I think there's a lot of synergy with financial professionals, whether it's CPAs, accountants, enrolled agents, fractional CFOs, because they're dealing with the financial side of what the clients are needing. And for example, for an M&A situation, you might have a fractional CFO who's asked to gather up the financial statements and work with a CPA to get a valuation for the company, or to review some preliminary financial statements if they're on the buy side for a potential acquisition. And so then in those situations, those professionals are in the position to ask, hey, do we have an attorney that we're working with on this? Because we're going to need one very soon, if not now. And so then they can bring me into that situation. On the flip side, if I've got a business that maybe they were smaller, but they grew, and so now they're looking to sell for 1 or 2 million, and they need a CPA, they need a fractional CFO, then that's something that I can bring those professionals in on and try to make sure that they are surrounded with the right people to help them to be successful. And I try to make sure that my clients know that I have a good network. Sometimes I'll have people just reach out to me, hey, I'm not happy with my tax person. Do you have a couple of tax people you'd recommend? And so that's probably the most common request is tax people, just because people get emotional when it comes to taxes, which I understand. I don't like the government taking any more of my money than they need to. But yeah, I find that those are the kinds of professionals that seem to have the most synergy. And then financial advisors sometimes they'll have clients that will need some legal assistance. Bankers, lenders sometimes are solid contacts as well, because their clients are coming to them looking for a loan to buy real estate or to buy a business or to get an SBA loan to buy a small business. And they can ask them, hey, do you have legal counsel for this? Or sometimes I'll have clients that are looking to buy or sell a business and need a connection to a banker or lender to help facilitate the transaction somehow.
Yeah. Like for me, I don't do tax work, but I specifically just get these issues that come up, an obscure issue with titling for one of my clients in the past, like their property is being titled correctly. And no, I don't know what to do with that. It's just things just come up. Yeah. So many contract scenarios. And usually every time I talk to Aron, I learn something new, because I took business law in school because it was required. Part of the CPA exam but like, it's just so many things change, so much happens, and just this Corporate Transparency Act, I don't even know what's going to come next. You just have to be able to be ready to have somebody that like Aron that you can just talk with and be like, hey, I want to make sure I'm not putting myself out there with some undue risk here. Or obviously it's win if he saves you money, but sometimes it's just, you just don't want to have that much risk. And a lot of businesses fail. I think some of the reason why when you see the stats about businesses not lasting longer than 5 or 10 years is eventually over time, if you don't have good advisors next with you, whether it's legal advisors or fractional CFOs or tax CPAs, whatever they may be, eventually some mistake happens. It could be quite costly. That's good. So tell me, just as we move into wrap this up, personal type question, what really motivates you daily in your work?
Oh, my sons. You can see my older son there over my shoulder. I need a picture of my younger one. But I've got 2 boys, ages 2 and 5. So making sure that they're cared for. And in terms of helping clients, I think my motivation, I want clients to know what they're dealing with and to be able to make informed decisions. I also want them to feel like they're getting proactive service. So I try to call back or check in or follow up when I send something to make sure they got it, to make sure they don't have any questions. Do I do that every time? No, I'm not perfect at it, but I try to make sure that they have the opportunity to ask questions like you brought up earlier with the bank documents. What if the average person doesn't understand that? I try to help them to understand those things and try to make sure that I answer questions, highlight key sections that need to be negotiated or considered at least, so that way they can go, yes, I want to push back on that, or no, I don't. And they can decide if that's a hill they want to die on, but I'm at least highlighting those things that would make me go, I wouldn't sign this if I was you. It's your call. in terms of what I push back on, but I at least wanted to bring this to your attention. So I think there's a lot of people out there that are good business people, but legal language is almost a different language. And so just having somebody that can help you understand it and make informed decisions, I think is important. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. There's so much value in what you have to offer. I think one of the things that's great about Aron is just, I always tell people, like, I like to just read stuff at an 8th grade level or whatever, high school level, whatever you want to say. Sometimes, those contracts that you come across, any document, it's just, Aron can take it and put it at a level that you'll understand and know what's going on and be able to make a better decision on. So that's very important in a good attorney. So yeah, no, Aron, it was great having this discussion and taking time out of your day and educating us all on the value of a good small business attorney, basically, that can handle so many different areas. So I appreciate the time, and you have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. You as well, Shane. Thanks for having me on, and let me know if I can help you in any way. I'll definitely continue to keep you in mind as well.
All right, good talking with you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bender CFO Podcast. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube so you don't miss another episode, or listen to us on Spotify and rate us 5 stars so more people can get this content to help their businesses grow and be successful.